Hello, dear students. Welcome back to our new channel. Students, today we have three major topics that affect not just our future, but it also affects the world around us. So, we'll talk about World Water Day, the melting glacier crisis, and the ongoing GM uh, crops, the debate which is going on over GM crops. Okay, so these issues might seem unrelated at first, but trust me, students, as we move along, you'll know how they are deeply connected. So grab your notebooks, just sit back and listen as we break it all down. First, imagine, students, there is a day without water. So there will be no brushing for your teeth, no drinking water, no cooking, no bathing. Now this sounds impossible, right? Yet for 2.2 billion people across the world, this is a daily reality. That's why World Water Day is observed on March 22. March 22 to remind us of the importance of fresh water. Students, why was World Water Day started? So it all began in 1993, and it was led by the United Nations as a way to make people aware of the global water crisis. The goal? To ensure that by 2030, everyone on this planet access has access to clean water and sanitation. Okay, a goal that falls under SDG 6, Sustainable Development Goal 6. Okay, so this is the target set by United Nations under SDG goals. Now, when we talk about water crisis in India, see, India is home to 70% of world's population. Okay, 70% of world's population, but it has only about 4% 4% of the world's freshwater resources, and this imbalance has led to severe water scarcity in many parts of the country. Some facts are mentioned, like um 21 Indian cities, including Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, are predicted to run out of groundwater soon. That they'll run out of groundwater. Groundwater बचेगा ही नहीं. Over 600 million people, 600 million Indians, they face high to extreme water stress every year. And by 2050, water demand in India will be twice the available supply. ओके, तो बाय 2050 तो आप ये समझिए कि अभी जितनी डिमांड है उससे भी डबल हो जाएगी. ओके, वेल द गुड न्यूज इज वी ऑल कैन प्ले अ रोल, and this I think we have repeated in many news podcasts, and even in the mentorship session we have focused on saving water, preserving environment, right? So what we can do, and this we already know, that reducing water wastage is key. So whenever you are brushing, or just close the taps. Some people, some students have a tendency to keep it open while brushing, right? So even these small actions, they play a big role. Take shorter showers and fix leaks. Moreover, in some states, there is a mandatory rainwater harvesting uh, system is being installed at every house. So collecting and storing rainwater for later use can be a way to preserve water, right? And growing native plants. Native. Growing native plants, because these plants require less water than exotic plants. So in your garden, try to grow the native plants. And lastly, of course, educating others. See, spreading awareness about water conservation is important, right? So this World Water Day, let's ask ourselves what I can do to save water. All right. Now, students, let's shift our focus to something equally important, glaciers. Now, these frozen giants, they store about 75% of the world's fresh water, but they are melting faster than even before. So, what is happening? Glaciers in Himalayas, glaciers in Himalayas. As you can see, these are the glaciers which we can find in India. Siachen is there, Gangotri, Pindari, Barasigri, Baltoro. So these are the glaciers which are found in India. So glaciers in Himalayas, they are melting at an alarming rate. And in the 2010s, they melted 65%. They melted 65% faster than in the previous decade. And if this cycle continues, we could lose a third of our Himalayan glacier by 2100. तो by 2100, 22nd century तक आते आते हम अपने वन थर्ड ग्लेशियर्स, हिमालयन ग्लेशियर्स को हम खो बैठेंगे, right? So why does this matter? See, students, glaciers are, you can imagine them as a giant water tanks, and they supply water to rivers like Ganga, Yamuna and Brahmaputra. So if they disappear, millions of people will lose their water resource. अब वो क्या करते हैं, जैसे जितने भी rivers हैं, गंगा, यमुना, ब्रह्मपुत्र, now you might have wondered rivers and why Himalayan rivers, they are considered as perennial source of water. This is the reason, क्योंकि जो वहां पे ग्लेशियर प्रेजेंट है, वो उनको एज अ फीडर की तरह काम करता है और उनको वाटर प्रोवाइड कराता है. सो इफ these glaciers will disappear, then millions of people who depend on river water, they lose their water source. All right. And there are certain other risks also associated with melting of glaciers. First is glacial lake outburst floods. Now, what are these? Students, as the name itself is suggesting, these are sudden floods caused by bursting glacier lakes. And in 2013, the Uttarakhand floods, they were triggered by such an event. है ना? और साथ ही साथ क्या हो सकता है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डिस्ट्रक्शन, है ना. So bridges, roads, and even an entire villages can be wiped out. A recent example was Chungthang Dam disaster in Sikkim. And of course, freshwater crisis will be there. See, without glaciers, the rivers they feed will dry up, and this will affect farming and drinking water supplies. Okay, so what can be done? Technology, integrating technology. See, early warning systems are, if they are installed, then they can help predict when a glacier might burst. At the same time, stronger infrastructure against these glacial lake outburst floods are needed. So bridges and roads, they need to be built to withstand extreme weather. Moreover, students, the main culprit for like why glaciers are melting is climate change. So we need to cut down carbon emissions. And if we don't act now, the world will look very different by 2050. Right? Now, students, let's talk about food. Okay? So, have you ever wondered uh, what exactly is GM crops? Now, you might have heard of GM crops. है ना, तो ये क्या है, and this we have covered in mentorship sessions. So these are crops that have been scientifically altered to grow better so that they can resist disease and they produce more food. है ना। तो उनको साइंटिफिकली ऑल्टर किया जाता है ताकि वो डिजीज को रेजिस्ट कर सके, प्रोडक्टिविटी एग्रीकल्चर की इंक्रीज कर सके, राइट। Now, why do we need GM crops? See, India has population of 1.4 billion. 1.4 billion population है हमारी, and it is still counting. So, to feed everyone, we need crops that grow faster and uh, crops that resist droughts or and it fight pests and diseases and have better nutritional value, है ना। तो हमें ऐसी टाइप की क्रॉप चाहिए जो जल्दी से ग्रो करे, ड्रॉट को रेजिस्ट करे, पेस्ट और डिजीजेस के साथ फाइट कर सके और न्यूट्रिशनल वैल्यू भी अच्छी हो। ओके, सो ग्लोबली मोस्ट कॉमन जीएम क्रॉप्स आर सोयाबीन, सोयाबीन है, राइट। तो ग्लोबली तो ये सारी क्रॉप्स हैं, जैसे सोयाबीन होगी, मेज हो गया, कॉटन, कैनोला। एंड इंडिया, in India, students, please remember that only approved GM crop is BT cotton. BT cotton. This is the only crop which is approved for production. And this covers 90% of India's cotton farm. 90%। तो अभी हमारे इंडिया में जितनी भी कॉटन ग्रो करी जाती है उसमें से 90% इज बीटी कॉटन। ओके, एंड अ न्यू जीएम क्रॉप, जीएम मस्टर्ड, एक और न्यू जीएम क्रॉप है जीएम मस्टर्ड। इट वाज आल्सो अप्रूव्ड इन 2022 बट इट्स फेसिंग लीगल चैलेंजेस इन सुप्रीम कोर्ट। तो अभी इसको ऑफिशियली नहीं बोला गया है प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए, राइट। नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज, आर जीएम क्रॉप सेफ? See, students, the thing is, not everyone agrees that GM crops are good. Okay, so there are some of the pros and cons of growing GM crop. Okay, जैसे कि क्या क्या है, कुछ लोग कह रहे हैं कि GM क्रॉप ठीक है, कुछ कह रहे हैं कि नहीं नहीं ठीक नहीं है, राइट। तो उसके तरफ भी हमें थोड़ा सा देखना होगा। जैसे पॉजिटिव साइड्स क्या है, ऑफ कोर्स पॉजिटिव साइड्स क्या हो सकते हैं कि more food can be grown on the same land. Okay, so it increases the yield, productivity of any crop. And if GM crops are being grown, then they can naturally resist the pests and diseases. Moreover, as we have just now covered that India's many districts are facing water crisis, so GM crops can survive with less water. So this is again an added advantage. Now, what are the cons of GM crop? First reason is GM crop can spread and affect wild plants. So, it can harm biodiversity. And moreover, since GM crops are being scientifically altered, right? So, long term effects on humans are still being studied. अभी हमें परफेक्टली एकदम परफेक्ट आंसर नहीं है हमारे पास कि अफेक्ट होगा कि नहीं होगा। इट इज स्टिल बीइंग स्टडीड कि क्या हो सकता है क्या नहीं हो सकता है। सो देर आर सर्टेन अननोन हेल्थ रिस्क आर इन्वॉल्व। एंड फाइनली, GM seeds, they are expensive and they don't produce new seeds, so it forces farmers to buy them every year. अभी अगर हम नॉर्मली बात करें तो क्या होता है, फार्मर्स दे व्हेनेवर दे ग्रो एनी क्रॉप, तो उससे जो सीड मिलता है दे अगेन सो देम, है ना। तो वहां से जो सीड मिलता है वो उसी को ग्रो करते हैं। लेकिन जीएम क्रॉप का क्या है कि एक बार अगर ग्रो कर लिया गया तो उसमें से जो सीड मिलेगा उसको आप दोबारा ग्रो नहीं कर सकते, राइट। सो जीएम एंड मोर ओवर जीएम सीड्स आर एक्सपेंसिव, so this increases farmers dependency on companies. And इंडिया में कौन सी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है? इन इंडिया GM crops are controlled by GEAC, genetic Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, and this comes under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And India is also signatory to um, Cartagena Protocol, which ensures that GM crops are used safely. All right. So what's next? See, Supreme Court will hear arguments regarding GM mustard on April 15th. And if it is improved, if it is being approved by the Supreme Court, then it could lead to more GM food crops in India. All right. So students, we have covered a lot today. Water scarcity, glaciers, glacier melting and GM crops. राइट तो ये सारी चीजें आज हमने कवर किया नाउ द की टेक अवे इज द फ्यूचर इज इन आवर हैंड्स व्हाट चॉइसेस विल यू मेक will you conserve water will you support policies that protect glaciers will you learn more about food safety think about it discuss this with your friends and let's build a better tomorrow so that's all for today students thank you for tuning in and don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends see you next time